Thank you, Madam Chair. It's rare that we have such clarity of the choice in front of us in public policy and the direction we go as a region and the decision that we're going to choose and the decision that we're going to make. And today really is a very clear choice. It's a choice between we believe that climate change is a serious issue and we believe that that must have us take action to try and confront that issue, or we do not. We believe that air quality issues are a very serious issue and we have the opportunity to take action to make those better, or we do not. We also believe in science and facts surrounding what we actually know works to reduce congestion and build the foundation for the region of the future. And there can be differences of opinion on which side of that choice folks want to be on. But for my own sense, I believe that the choice is very clear. I believe we need to take action to tackle the very problem of climate change. I believe we need to take action to tackle the very problem of air quality. I believe we need to take action to adopt decades of science and best practices as it comes to land use and transportation planning to actually reduce congestion. And I think the things we're voting on today are absolutely the wrong approach. And I think it will set us back potentially decades if as a region we don't come to the realization of the challenges we face and the opportunity in front of us. It's been mentioned before, and I think it's important to repeat, that in 2004, and I was not here in 2004, in 2004 I wasn't really thinking about transit. I didn't have transit. I had a road from Fallujah to Ramadi. We did not have much congestion on that road. We were happy to just survive. We weren't stuck in traffic jams. But I went back and I pulled the actual ballot measure that was before the voters, because we repeatedly say we made a promise to the voter, and here was a part of the promise. Actual text from what the voters approved said, flexible. It is the intent that the ITOC will assist SANDAG to be opportunistic to take advantage of changing situations in the future with regard to technologies and transportation developments. Therefore, the provisions contained below are viewed through 2048 based upon a 2004 perspective and are not meant to be unduly restrictive on ITOC and SANDAG's roles and responsibilities. The promise to the voters is that over 40 years we might learn something. The promise that the voters approved said that situations may change and circumstances may change. And every issue we hear before us is changing something that was previously done because we learn more, because the world changes, because circumstances lead us to be wise stewards of the public fund and to make the best decision in front of us. What we're talking about today is absolutely consistent with the actual letter of the law that the voters approved. Now, there was a betrayal of public trust. That is without question. Reporting by the Voice of San Diego showed that the leadership of SANDAG misled the public, knowingly misled the public about how much money they had, about where it would go. And I think in a lot of ways that episode, because there was a change in leadership at SANDAG, because there was leadership that changed the composition and structure of SANDAG, has perhaps been glossed over. And so if we want to have a debate over the next year about the betrayal of public trust, I think we should probably do that. And we should probably go back and look into what led to that situation and what didn't happen. We've heard today that 2/3 of the funding from Transnet has gone to transit. That is not true. I have the numbers. $1.3 billion to date has been spent on transit. $1.3 billion has been spent on roads. Now, there has been a greater investment in transit, and the reason for that is very simple, because transit dollars draw down more state and federal match. So the $1.3 billion we've spent on transit has been matched by $7.3 billion in state and federal funds. The $1.3 billion in roads has been matched by $2.8 billion in state and federal fundings for roads. That is more than double drawdown of available funds to make a wiser investment. Just a few minutes ago, we bragged about how our housing dollars had leveraged all of this other money. Shouldn't we consider what leverages our dollars best? We know what leverages our dollars best. We know. Transit ridership is not down. Transit ridership is up. 86 million in 2018. And that's in a broken system that's not the system we want, because it has to change. We've talked a lot about traffic congestion, and the concept of induced demand is one that has been studied ad nauseum and at length. The example of Houston is one of the clearest ones. They spent billions of dollars to build a 26-lane freeway, 26 lanes. And after it was opened, congestion in the morning increased 30%. Congestion in the evening increased 50%. How many times do we have to learn the same lesson? The way you reduce congestion is you help give people who want to take another option an option. So based on the Houston example, if we split the difference and say a 40% increase, well then a 10% reduction from what's been proposed sounds really good. And you don't have to remove that many cars from the roadway to see a significant reduction in congestion. We've talked about electric vehicles. I support electric vehicles. This board adopted a measure for a roadmap to the future, but let's be honest about how quick we are going to see those impacts. There are 3 million registered cars in San Diego County. 30,000 of them are electric vehicles, which means we could have a 10-fold increase in the number of electric vehicles, and it would still be less than 10% of the total cars on the road. And there's huge societal inequities in who's going to be able to buy those cars and where they're going to go. We've talked about autonomous cars as holding great promise to solve our VMT challenges and problems. But a UC Davis study showed that autonomous cars have the potential to increase VMTs by 83%. When people don't have to get in them and drive them and park them, they use them more. We talked about housing, and it's troubling to hear that we're not going to meet our goals at a time we're allocating more money. We have had lawsuits surrounding housing. Those have been around general plan amendments. But we have tens of thousands of units of housing consistent with our general plan that we could build without a history of lawsuits. Now, speaking of the general plan, I know we're going to discuss this later, and I do think there are pieces of we should not change what we said we would do that's an interesting argument when it comes to discussions about what this board does as it relates to the general plan. But while we're on the subject of lawsuits, we know without a doubt that what Sandag has done in the past is in violation of state law. How many more times do you have to be sued to know that what you're doing is wrong? And yet we're going to vote to increase VMTs, increase greenhouse gas emissions, at a very time when the existing plan said it wouldn't work. At a time our county is in litigation on our climate action plans, we're going to vote to say, as a statement of values as a board, we are on the side of increasing greenhouse gas emissions and increasing VMTs. At a time we're trying to say, no, we're serious about our climate action plan and we want to do things different. Since 2010, VMTs are up 8 billion. And that's what this vote is. When you say we're going to do roads and freeways and not transit, it is indisputable. You are saying we support more VMTs and we support more emissions. When it comes to air quality, just last week we released the American Lung Association report, and when it comes to ozone, we got an F. Ozone is driven by car emissions. That's what drives it. And this is not just a problem in the 4th District. One of the highest levels of ozone is in Alpine. This is an issue that impacts children and kids, where you have neighborhoods where kids are 8 times more likely to have asthma than other neighborhoods in our same jurisdiction. We've heard today that we shouldn't subsidize transit, as if roads pay for themselves. That is the greatest fallacy that I've ever heard. There is no form of transportation in America that pays for itself. You don't pay for your sidewalks. There's not a sidewalk tax that builds your sidewalks. When you take a plane, your plane ticket didn't build your airport or the runway. If you come in on a cruise ship, your cruise ship ticket didn't build the terminal. But only when it comes to transit, we go, oh, well, it's got to pay for itself, when nothing else we do does. What we're talking about is providing people options, providing people choices. And change is hard, I get that. It would be easier to live in a 2004 mindset. We hear a lot that the aspiration of where we want to go is somehow to go back at a period where we were great, sometime in the past. Sometimes people refer to it as Make America Great Again. I think we have to decide to go forward. I think that there is a future and a vision where we can tackle the challenges of climate change. We can take action to actually lower congestion. We can do things we know that will provide the ability to build housing where it belongs. We can go to those parents whose children are 8 times more likely to have asthma and say, we decided to do something different because that's not right. But that's not what we're doing. What we're doing in recommendation 1 is to oppose any modification, which is directly inconsistent with the will of the voters, who specifically passed something to say, here's the vehicle to consider modifications. And this measure doesn't even have to be what I think we should have versus what someone else thinks we should have. No modification. We have much different wildfire risks today than we did in 2004. So should we only build infrastructure consistent to the challenges and realities of 2004? Recommendation number 2, advocating for highways and road projects in the new regional transportation plan. Again, this is a recommendation that clearly says this is the way we go, or we can go transit. We want to go this way. That is an affirmative vote on the side of VMTs, greenhouse gas emissions, and air pollutions. The third item, requesting Sandag pursue new sources of funding, that's one I could support. That's one I think is good, and I think if this board voted in support of that, that would be a powerful message we could take to the voters when Sandag does bring a new funding source to say this was brought at the request of the County Board of Supervisors. And so if all 3 are put together, I cannot support it. But I think as a region, we're making decisions that are going to have tremendous lasting impacts. I don't know how many times we have to be told, how many times we have to be shown, how many times we have to feel the real impacts of what we're doing to recognize that we should look at the world not in today's light, but in the experience shaped by the past and a roadmap provided to us towards the future. Thank you.